So the Terry Nichols trial ended, and it would be months before Judge Richard Maich settled on a sentence. Meanwhile, the Media Consortium was one of several groups winning the National Crime Victims Service Award. The honor came from the U.S. Justice Department's Office for Victims of Crime. It was official recognition of the media's success in cooperating with the court, security forces, the city of Denver, and victim advocates. Unofficial recognition of the media's strategy had been spreading across the country since before the McVeigh trial even began.
Well, if we call the O.J. Simpson case a 1, then I guess we give the media in this case a 9.5. The only reason I can't give the media a 10 in this case is that occasionally as humans we whine, and there's been some whining, and there has been some shoving in front in lines, but it's been very civilized pushing and shoving, as opposed to the sort of uncivilized, unceremonious pushing and shoving that often occurs.
You know, any observer would say that the trial coverage was far more dignified, and those who covered it were far more dignified than those who covered the O.J. Simpson trial. Unfortunately, that is sort of the standard these days of how to measure major national legal proceedings.
Jim Manspeaker, who's the clerk of the court, sort of set up things beforehand. They put up the bullpen. They set down the rules, the guidelines, they provided the press room, and it worked a lot smoother than I ever expected it to.
I think for the first time ever, print and electronic journalists came together and worked together for our common good, and that was how can we best cover this story.
The consortium's efforts certainly had an impact, but some of those covering this story weren't convinced the public would notice.
I think people don't care. People don't care whose opinion it is or who's reporting it. You know, our egos might not like that, but they really just think of the media as one monstrous entity. And they probably think of daily papers and Nightline in the same breath as the tabloids, the supermarket tabloids, and some of these sleazier TV shows. And I think in their mind it all kind of rolls together.
I don't think that media responsibility should change with the story. I think it should always be there. Unfortunately, it's not. You know, I often resent being painted with the same broad brush of the tabloid reporters. Unfortunately, that's the way people see all of us, some of us. And I think that your responsibility should be in check no matter what you're doing.
I think what the tabloid involvement does sometimes is to make the major traditional media more eager to get the stories out more quickly for fear that it'll be the Globe or the National Enquirer or hard copy that gets the story on the air first. And therefore they jump to things that perhaps aren't as solid as they might have otherwise have been and turn out to be wrong in hindsight.
Although it's not supposed to happen, standards of behavior apparently do change. Stories about sex, greed, and celebrity seem to loosen the journalistic approach for many of the media. Where the O.J. Simpson story exemplified the sensational and encouraged sensational coverage for everyone, this story seemed to set clear standards for how individual journalists should approach the story. It also drew a clear line between sensational and mainstream media organizations, with the so-called tabloid media more or less staying away from Denver.
This trial is not of interest to the tabloids, is not of interest to hard copy, to Inside Edition. It's not getting the amount of international coverage that the O.J. Simpson case received. Nevertheless, in this country, domestically among the major networks, there are as many media organizations, I think, big-time media organizations covering this case and covering it almost as much as the O.J. Simpson case.
Most members of the media here had good feelings about the journalistic approach and the consortium's success. But Judge Richard Maich's management of the trial also got a lot of the credit. Though he doesn't talk to the media, he made his viewpoints quite clear, gagging the attorneys, shielding the jury's identities, and keeping cameras out of the courtroom, among other restrictions.
Certainly the trial was the judge. This judge was, I'm told by knowledgeable legal people that he's one of the smartest men they know. He certainly was very firm. He kept control all the way through. Presumably he ran the trial so that it will be free of appeals and reversals and things. But this guy showed that he knew how to run a trial. Now, whether he benefited by watching the O.J. Simpson circus, who knows?
I think it would be naive to think that this federal judge didn't realize and understand the damage to the judicial system as a result of O.J., at least in the eyes of the public. I don't think he specifically set the rules to counter that, because Richard Maich has a long history of being a real tough judge in his courtroom with no nonsense. But I think it may have heightened his concern that there be no nonsense this time because of the perceived nonsense that went on in the O.J. trial. Now that it's over with, you wish there was a camera in the courtroom so that America could see how a court of law is supposed to function.
This was a tremendous opportunity to show people what justice can be at its best. And the only people who are seeing it are the people in the physical courtroom. And that's a shame. I don't see a problem in the world with televising court cases as long as the judge is in control. The problem in California wasn't media. The problem in California was the judge letting the attorneys run wild.
Although journalists covering the bombing trials were almost unanimous in their praise of Maich, on another level, they worry about the success of his tactics. It's because more judges may now keep cameras out of their courtrooms, may keep attorneys from talking, and may impose even tougher restrictions on access. But journalists know that the restraints imposed by Maich helped them to set an example as well. The effort here won't change the media profession overnight, but it's already inspired interest in other cities hosting major trials. Even though it's clear that all of the media's irritating competition-based habits won't disappear, the standard has gone up a notch, and that may help to re-emphasize what matters most.
What could be healthier in a case of this nature for a judicial system than the focus to be on the case and the participants in the case, and not on the media and what the media is doing? That's the way it's supposed to be.